Welcome to Dodgers Daily. Casey Porter here. So glad that you decided to tune in. Fans, today we have a very, very, very special guest, the AAA Comets play-by-play voice. Alex Freedman joins again. And Alex, you're not getting ready to get busy anytime soon after the new year starts, are you?
Yeah, just a little bit, Casey, as we were saying before we started going on. You know, you have Christmas and New Year's, and that those first couple days you're back in the office after New Year's. It's like, oh, yeah, things are getting real.
Yeah, I always say nobody loves baseball more than me, probably you too. But hey, baseball season's great, but so is the off season, right? So some great R&R, and you needed it last year because you rebranded to the Oklahoma City Comets. I thought it was a huge success. I thought the crowds grew. There were times to where Oklahoma City had, like the second largest attendance of any AAA team in the league. I just thought it really went over real well. So talk about that.
Absolutely. I think it went over better than I expected, and not to say that I had low expectations by any means, but I think I had realistic expectations, and they maybe be a little bit more pushback than there was. But even those who at first said, I don't like it, I don't get it, once they heard the story behind it, once you saw the logos that went along with it, those opinions tended to turn pretty quickly. I think one of the biggest myths or misnomers is teams just rebrand to make money. That could not be further from the case. It is just such a long and arduous process, especially because we basically had to do it twice in 2 years with the Oklahoma City Baseball Club. It was far from an ideal situation. But I preface that by saying did over $1 million worth of merchandise throughout the year.
Wow.
So that's, an added bonus, of course. But it was something that went over really well, and I think was a great thing and great new chapter in this franchise's history, and hopefully a name that will stay around for a long, long time.
Yeah, the uniforms are absolutely. I cannot tell you, Alex, how many from people that live in Los Angeles that really don't have anything to do with AAA Oklahoma City, and maybe they watched the game on Spectrum. I can tell you the uniforms were an absolute hit. I mean, they were just absolutely awesome.
I think our graphic design folks and the graphic design company that we worked with as well did a great job. And internally, I will tell you that when we first saw the mock-ups of the hats and the jerseys, like you said, that's when it really sold everybody internally.
Yeah, me too. No doubt about it. It was pretty awesome. Okay, so I know the Tower Buzzers, I know you guys didn't have anything to do with that, but boy, you know what kind of process they went through, right? I mean, it's not just, hey, we're putting a new name out there. You got to do all the signs in front of the entryways to the stadium. You got to do all the logos for the social. I mean, it is a encompassing process. So I'm sure you kind of felt for them rebranding the Tower Buzzers, right?
Absolutely. But I think they had a little bit, quote unquote, easier because it is a totally new franchise and you're moving into a new stadium. Whereas opposed to, like you said, you don't realize how many places that your team name is in a facility and your logos are until you have to go through this process. And for me, starting with the franchise in 2012, it's technically the third different time I went through it. And it's a lot. And it even comes down to the little stuff like your website, your email domain, your email signatures. So many things that people don't think of. The average person certainly doesn't think of when you are going through a rebrand that has to change over. But yeah, like the Tower Buzzers, for them, it is a little bit different because, like I said, this is a fresh slate for them. But yeah, just making sure that everything is on point and everything is the way you want it to be. And I think in a sense, maybe it is a little bit more pressure because it is that first impression that they're going to have to make to their new fans and community too.
Okay, so this is a little bit of a bone to pick I have with minor league baseball in 2021, after COVID, whenever they restructured everything. Oklahoma City lost some long time, I don't want to call them rivals, but some cities that we played like Memphis and Omaha and maybe even in Nashville. And I know Nashville, I think they lost their team for a year or two. Then New Orleans doesn't have a team anymore. But we kind of lost some old Chicago, the Iowa Cubs, Des Moines. We don't play the I Cubs anymore. So do you see that changing back, or is that just something that's going to stay?
Well, we saw it start to experiment a bit with interleague play this past year. We had an interleague series where we played Memphis at home. There were a couple of other teams in our league that played international league teams. We're going to play Charlotte this coming year in Charlotte. So Major League Baseball is starting to, again, experiment with it. I think see what the feasibility is moving forward. Some of it, honestly, might have to do with the fact that we could, in a few years, be looking at 32 Major League teams, which could lead to 32 AAA teams, and what kind of realignment comes along with that as well. That's just a little bit of speculation on my part, but I think there was a lot of fan feedback, especially from those in the Pacific Coast League. And you can criticize Major League Baseball as much as you want. I certainly have some gripes with them as well, but they do extensive fan surveying, and I think there is a lot that has come as a result from that. And there was a lot of folks that said we're kind of tired of seeing the same things over and over and over again. And even in the International League, and you get a load of this, we play Memphis, and I'm talking with Lucan Baker, who's on our team, who had played for several years in Memphis. And he made a comment at first that didn't quite register with me about how when he was with Memphis, we're going to play Oklahoma City, so we're going to play a PCL team before we've played every International League team. So that gets my mind spinning, as it does, and I looked went to the stats portal. There's still 3 or 4 teams, the Memphis Redbirds in the International League, have never played. Yeah. They've been in the same league as them since 2021, and they've never played them at all in now 4 or 5 plus seasons. So, I think, again, that there is the travel component and the logistics component that comes into it as well. I think we're seeing a little bit more variety, and hopefully it is a sign of things to come.
Yeah, I think the International League has 4 or 5, maybe 6 more teams in the Pacific Coast League. Would that be correct? Do you know that?
Oh, it's 10. It's double
10
the size.
More teams.
It's 20 in the International League and 10 in the PCL.
So, yeah, they get a lot more variety than we do with the PCL. That's just kind of my gripe there. And that comes from me growing up watching the iCubs and watching all those different organizations. So,
yeah, you're not the only one. There are a lot of people who, a lot of it has to do with their Major League fans as well. The Cardinals fans, the Cubs fans, that was always a highlight of their year if they lived in Oklahoma City. They got a little bit of that last year with Memphis, but I know that the Iowa Cubs, I think they played out in Las Vegas last year, and but like I said, there's going to be some more of that this coming year. Not every team in the PCL is going to do it. It's more of the teams that are kind of more towards the middle of the country, and like I said, the travel and logistics have a lot to do with it as well. Like Salt Lake and Omaha played each other, where you can get a direct flight on Delta, to Salt Lake City being a hub. So that stuff comes into play as well as to when Major League Baseball is figuring this out. And you're in Oklahoma City on American Airlines. We have direct flights to Charlotte. So that's definitely something that gets factored in.
Okay, you mentioned some of the experimenting that the Major League Baseball is not necessarily. I mean, they don't necessarily take it on right away, but they're not hesitant to look into it, maybe get some fan polls, that kind of deal. The ABS system versus the challenge system. I think you and I both have been on the same page, having seen it, having talked to the players, the managers. I haven't talked to the umpires. Maybe you have, but I think they probably like it too. The challenge system coming to Major League Baseball. Can you tell us all about it and why you think it was the one that was chosen?
Well, I think when we first saw the full ABS, there was a lot of issues with it, and the direct ones you would think of. Part of it was they just made the strike zone too big. They gave an inch off the plate in both directions. And then you think about, only a sliver or a seam of the ball has to hit that invisible box. So you're looking at basically 1 inch plus the circumference of a baseball, essentially, off the plate that could be a strike. Of course, there were the infamous stories where a pitch bounces and then goes through the plate. I never saw that personally, but I heard of it.
I never thought of that. That's funny.
Yeah. And then I remember a game in Sugar Land a couple years ago where Oklahoma City was blowing them out. It was a full ABS game. They've got position players pitching, and the pitches weren't particularly close, where a human umpire is probably going to call strikes unless it's really egregious. ABS is black and white. It doesn't account for situations like that. It doesn't account for, studies have shown 3-0, the umpire zone tends to have more, you measure the actual square footage or inches of it, area of it, and it expands. Again, ABS is totally black and white. Challenge system, I think, is great. It's been entertaining. It adds a layer of strategy that I think, in a sense, we lost a little bit when we had the universal DH come into play. So it kind of adds another wrinkle to it. Okay, when are you going to use that challenge? Are you going to use it? Is it worth it to use it on a 3-0 count, in the second inning? Thinking through those situations where, okay, is it worth it right now? How are we going to do this? The other thing that, I think that we've seen long-term is, this is to help the 50-50 calls. And that's exactly, I keep track by hand of the Comets challenges, their opponents' challenges. And guess what? At the end of the year, it ends up being basically 50-50 between confirmed and overturned. Look, these umpires, I say it all the time, being a home plate umpire in this day and age has never been harder. Guys throw harder. They throw with more movement. They're throwing pitches that we've never seen before, and they're expected to be perfect. And also, let's not also mention, guys don't throw as many strikes just in general. And you're seeing an umpire, you're down there, you're seeing more pitches. You're not seeing a guy necessarily all around the zone where it's a little bit easier, relatively speaking. So I think with all that being said, I'm excited to see how it's going to play out in the major leagues, where everybody in theory is better. The players are better. The umpires are better. So interested to see, how that's going to come to be. But I think it's good. I think they've done a great job of nailing the fan engagement side of it with putting the graphic on the scoreboard. I mean, there are times where we've been in a game of blowout one way or the other, and pitch gets overturned and it goes in the way of the losing team, and the fans start cheering, even though they might be down by 8 runs at that time. So it's a lot of fun, and it really does not take much time whatsoever. Like I said, I'm looking forward to it. The term I keep using to describe it is happy medium. Happy medium between, going to a full just automated system and still keeping that human element in there, because guess what? There's going to be plenty of times where teams run out of challenges, and whatever happens goes. And for me as a broadcaster, that's definitely a storyline that you talk about once a team is out of challenges and say it's a close game late. Hey, remember, they're out of challenges. They can't challenge it. So, it's really good. And I've always enjoyed it. I think players, coaches, I don't want to say it's universally liked, but certainly a majority is in favor of it.
So I had a question from the chat, and I get this question quite a bit, Alex, and that is, okay, well, the side to side, that's a measurement. I mean, the plate is only so wide, and that's pretty easy. But from top to bottom, you might have 2 6'2" guys, but their bodies are shaped entirely different. They may be longer on top, shorter on bottom, or vice versa. So and then they may have different stances. They may change their stance with 2 strikes. That one guy might stride a little bit wider than the next guy. So he's a little bit closer to the ground after he strides, that kind of thing. So how do they take all those variances into play and actually calculate the up and down part of the zone with the ABS?
Well, it's all based on height. And the last couple of years, there have been officials, or at least people who have been contracted by Major League Baseball in spring training to measure everybody. You're not just going off media guide height anymore. Wow. You're getting an accurate measurement, because, again, that's what determines. I have the document somewhere. I don't want to throw numbers out without being sure of it, but it is a percentage from basically your a certain percentage from whatever your maximum height is determines the top, and then another percentage determines the bottom as well.
Okay.
So stance, you can't manipulate it with stance. It is strictly based on height. And like I said, they've put safeguards in and another layer to measure accuracy by truly measuring guys in spring training.
Oh wow, that's quite cumbersome in AAA, especially considering like if just go follow Oklahoma City for a month, like in July or whenever things start heating up. I don't know how you do it because it seems like every series you're having to prepare for like 5 or 6 more pitchers, a couple position players. How do you put all that time into figuring out who are the new players, where'd they come from, and have enough information to sound intelligent on a broadcast? That has to be cumbersome.
Yeah, I mean, this is first world problems we're talking about here, but I think a lot of it just starts with having a good general sense and paying attention to the farm system as a whole. So when X player comes to you, it's like, and trust me, there have been times where there's someone I've never heard of who's come. But a good example I'll give you is like last year, we're in Sacramento, Alex Freedman gets hurt, and Elijah Hainline comes up, and I couldn't tell you a whole lot about him, but I knew the name. I knew he played with Rancho Cucamonga. I knew he'd been drafted the year before. But again, just kind of having that general sense of the farm system. I look at the other teams' box scores every single day. Follow them on social media just to see if there is anything significant that happened. And just like I said, having a general sense of who some of these people are, because there is going to be a point where that player's certainly not expecting they're going up to AAA for a time as well. But yeah, it's doing all that. Of course, relying on the coaches as well. Hey, what do you got on this guy? You might have seen some in spring training. Of course, our pitching coaches are going to talk to the pitching coach in Rancho or Tulsa or wherever it may be. So to just get a little bit of sense of that too, and of course, the scouting reports, the internet is your friend. Of course, it's a lot easier to do it, I think, in this day and age than it was 20 some odd years ago. But you also didn't have the same type of player movement, 20 some odd years ago that you do now.
Yeah, exactly. And then kind of on the flip side of this, really cool, kind of the Crash Davis effect is the AAA level in minor leagues, because you can have guys that know they're probably not going to even get called to the major leagues that year, maybe not ever again. But they're just not ready to quit. They just love baseball. They love helping the young guys coming up. Can you speak to some of those guys and what they mean to a AAA club like the Comets?
I guess I'll preface it by saying, going back to the question you asked earlier about realignment in 2021, one of the biggest, I think, negative effects of shrinking the minor leagues is it squeezed out the veteran class. Used to have AAA rosters stacked with veteran players and minor league free agents, but now every team has a cap on the amount of players in their minor league system. And again, the effect has been that older players they're not in AAA like they once were. AAA teams, AA teams, high single A, they all have gotten younger. That also goes back to cutting out short season. So between the player caps, eliminating a level of pro ball, it's been kind of an unfair result of, like I said, getting rid of older players. Now you still have some, and you look at this year, I mean, the Dodgers have only signed a very small amount that we know of minor league free agents. Mm-hmm. There very well could be others that they've signed, just has not been reported on yet. And last week, I was putting together my potential player list for the media guide. And that's when it dawned on me, man, they really have not signed many minor league free agents. Whereas my first year in Oklahoma City, 2012, I guess it would have been 25 then. You're probably looking at least half, if not much more. And that was also when we were affiliated with Houston, and they were in the depths of their rebuild. And at that time, they had nobody at the upper levels of the minor league. So it was just almost all minor league free agents and veteran guys. And you just do not see that anymore. So I think the ones who are around, it makes that role maybe even more important. Because you are that guy. Looking this past year, the Michael Chavises, the Nick Senzels. I remember it was funny. I was talking with David Anderson, one of our pitching coaches, the other day, and he was talking about how Matt Sauer, who really was not that old of a guy. I think a high school signee in 2017, but it's spent a little bit of time in the big leagues. He was basically the veteran for a lot of the year for Oklahoma City when, a few years ago, that would not necessarily be his role. And I think not just him, but maybe others, it sometimes that's not an unfair burden, I should say, but it's maybe something that a role that again, used to be filled by somebody else with a lot more extensive experience and could be that mentor. One of the guys I think of immediately, 2016, Will Venable, and now the manager of the Chicago White Sox. And, he went up in a pinch a couple times, the Dodgers, but, would get DFA'd and would elect to come back to OKC. And I remember that last year, we lose in the championship series, and I see him in the locker room afterwards, and he said, man, I'm really hoping to be back doing the same thing next year. Now his career trajectory went in a completely different direction, and I am not surprised whatsoever. It has ended up in where it currently is at. But again, used to have so many of those guys on a AAA roster that you just don't anymore. Just because the game is getting a lot younger because of all the reasons we talked about.
Yeah. It's always interesting too, because you hear about these prospects coming up and you think of them as being the babies and being young and being the young guys. And then you get a guy like a Will Klein or a Matt Sauer. Well, Matt Sauer's only 26 years old. Well,
right.
He's actually younger than some of these prospects. And so that's kind of a weird dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just AAA is just like you mentioned, such a weird melting pot in general. I guess in a sense, sometimes even more so now because it is younger. And I think about how 2024 in Sacramento and Blake Snell was with the Giants at that time is rehabbing and making a start against Oklahoma City, and OKC was short on pitchers, and Christian Romero, who would end up having a very significant role with the team this past year in 25, but he had not pitched above A ball until then. And here he is basically going toe for toe with Blake Snell, who would win 2 Cy Young Awards, huge free agent, things like that. Gosh, it was like this past year, someone was rehabbing maybe, or someone was, I think it was when Alexis Diaz, had been with OKC, and he pitched the top of an inning, and then the bottom of the inning was Craig Kimbrell pitching for Round Rock. I know Diaz isn't quite at the level of Kimbrell in his grand scheme of his career, but still, this is a guy who was an all-star recently, and a guy who's going to have certainly a Hall of Fame case, if not be in the Hall of Fame eventually, in Craig Kimbrell, pitching basically in consecutive half innings there. And then we had one, gosh, it was 23, where for Oklahoma City, Mike Montgomery pitched. I think Daniel Hudson was on rehab and pitched, and there was someone else. So you had 2 guys who had already recorded the final out of a World Series in a AAA game. There was someone else who was involved in that. And, occasionally when things of that nature happen, I'll send an email or send a DM to the great Jason Stark of The Athletic. And that was one of the things he highlighted in one of his columns about that, guys who had recorded final outs of the World Series, pitching in a random AAA game.
I get a kick out of it too. Like sometimes they stack those guys on top of each other. Like if you're a scout and you wanted to come watch, you could see like 4 or 5 guys in a row that are probably going to play a role for the major league club down the stretch, but they're on rehab or whatever it may be. And so you're doing that, then you're just facing random AAA guys, and the random AAA guys like win the game like 9-0. And you're like, baseball is an absolutely crazy sport. So having said that, you have every statistic on earth. I mean, you get all of the advanced analytics right there at your fingertips. They put them up on the scoreboard. So as a broadcaster, how do you use that information without drowning the listener in, oh man, this is a bunch of statistics, my head's just swimming? How do you make that balance?
Yeah, I think it is for a broadcast where you can have a wide array of levels of fans tuning in, whereas opposed to if someone is going to a Fangraphs, that is a certain type of fan that will they're looking for more stuff, and they're going to be more educated on the weighted runs created plus the WOBAs, the stuff like that. For the broadcast, I think there's some stuff that I do. I don't get too much more advanced than, say, OPS or strikeout rate or walk rate. And of course, I try my best, not all the time, but I think sometimes you have to put in the context, like, well, this is what it is, but this is what's considered average. This is what's considered good, so on and so forth. And I think for me personally, just because I am more that higher level fan, like, you have to put the governor on. Like, I could spend all day looking at different stuff. And I remember I was in the coaches, they use this program, and I'm sure most teams have access to it. Although that might change with that the new tech rules coming to MiLB. For those who haven't heard about that, which is a whole
I have not.
topic.
What are they?
Major League Baseball is going to. Why am I'm missing the word here? They're going to basically every minor league team. The tech that is used is going to be regulated by in Major League Baseball in the minor leagues. Basically, I think it's saying that the Dodgers and Astros can't use anything, light years ahead of other organizations, to kind of make that playing field cliche a little bit more level. So Major League Baseball is going to, again, like I said, regulate and have basically approved vendors, and this is the tech that you are allowed to use in the minor leagues. I don't know how I feel about that, but I did see someone make a good counter argument as a player has no control over who drafts them, and they basically get thrust into an organization no matter how advanced or behind the curve they are in terms of the tech these days. And I thought that's a pretty good point. But I think it's the reason I don't like it is, look, Dodgers are in the headlines a whole lot now with the reported signing of Kyle Tucker. And the thing that kind of always gets in my craw is, yes, they have a huge payroll at the major league level. Not denying that. It's not everything. It's certainly an advantage that they they have, but nobody knows all the other ways the Dodgers do things, and that they use their resources smartly. That in the grand scheme of things is not nearly the cost of a $240 million contract to Kyle Tucker. So that's why I'm a little, and I think you're also curbing innovation too, when you're regulating the use of tech in the minor leagues, where, there could be someone who, the Dodgers have hired or they know, or any other team that, hey, they had a beat on this new tech that, hey, they might try it. It might not work at all. It might be great that they were able to get ahead on. So I think, again, it curbs innovation, but I understand, like I said, the counterpoint that, so coaches, true media, which the Dodgers have, and you can look up every play, pitch, whatever, sort stats by whatever. And I remember there are times where it's like, man, maybe I asked someone to help me look something up, and I just think to myself, I'm actually glad I don't have access to it, because I would just get into so many rabbit holes. So again, it goes back to, advanced stats are part of the game, but I think that you use it contextually to help tell a story.
Okay, so Oklahoma City was on Spectrum some this year. Was that cool for you? Did you notice any difference in terms of the broadcast? Anything you had to do with that, or was that cool? And then how did that incorporate in? Talk about that.
That was awesome. We were on, I think, 13 games this past year, and on days where had to meet a few different conditions. We were playing at home, plus the Dodgers either had the day off, or they were on a national broadcast, like a Fox or an exclusive of Fox and ESPN, something like that. It's funny. We have this running joke that the games, first of all, Oklahoma City's record was terrible in those games. And then even the games they won, like every game, it was just ugly. Like every game was an ugly game on Spectrum, for whatever reason. I mean, obviously, total coincidence. But it was just kind of a running joke a few of us had in the press box about that. But no, it was great. It was able to, I think, showcase the brand, showcase the team, with so many guys, of course, going back and forth, these days. And it's not just unique to the Dodgers, but, showcasing that, hey, these guys, when they're not with the Dodgers, they're still playing, they're still working really hard and doing all that stuff. So that was great. We had to make some slight tech adjustments to it, but that was no issue for us. And it really just kind of shows you how far technology has come these days. Like they just pick up our stream, basically. It's not like we have to link up a satellite like that happened back in the day or anything like that. And all indications are that it's gonna be similar this year. Nothing is official yet, but I know both sides were very pleased with it and are looking forward to hopefully continuing here in 2026.
Okay, let's get into some of the player personnel. Ryan Ward set all kinds of records for the Bricktown era. Talk about him and the records he broke.
Oh gosh, the records. I mean, career home runs, career RBIs, single season RBI, single season hits. We don't have a definitive record for single season total bases, but I would be shocked if it was not. We don't have a single season qualifiers by, say, the slash line categories, anything like that. But just an incredible year for Ryan, and 3 years now in AAA, and he's gotten better and better each year. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about this. I've thought about it a few times, and one of the things that I think really impressed me, a lot of things impressed me about Ryan, who's just, our manager, Scott Hennessy, once told me, if anyone had a reason to be bitter, it would be him. And he's like the least bitter person there is. And, you get so many questions from scouts. These are scouts who have watched him play. Why isn't he in the big leagues?
Yeah, right.
They're not just looking at the numbers on the paper and all that. And the approach, and especially with 2 strikes from 2023 to 2025, it's almost like it's a totally different player. Mm-hmm. And that you look at year by year, strikeouts have dipped, walks have increased. I've certainly heard the interviews you've done with him and others have done with him, just having a better idea of approach, especially with 2 strikes. Even made him, said he spread his feet out a little bit more, with 2 strikes this year. Hopefully shorten up that swing, increase plate coverage and all that. I think the defense is underrated. It's more than serviceable in the corner outfield spots, as well as first base. And a guy who is just going to come to the ballpark every day and work and not get frustrated by things that are out of his control. And I think one of the things that I look at, maybe one of the biggest changes for Ryan from 23 to 25, was the leadership. Yeah. 23, he was his first year in AAA, amazing team that would eventually go on to win the PCL championship. And honestly, I remember him more as kind of a quiet guy. Him and Justin Yurchak, who played for us as well, really good friends, and just kind of were, both, again, professionals, good players, but just kind of more quiet, to turning into there's no official team captain, but basically team captain, this year, him and Chris Oakey this year, where I remember there's an issue where we were debating, we're going to fly or bus, and basically I went to them and be like, hey, those 2 guys, Wardo and Oakey, be like, hey, what do you think? Or at least can you start to ask around about what do you think would be best for this travel situation and all that. But yeah, the leadership I think is big. And of course that just comes with time and age and being comfortable. And that's something that I think that, as much as we talked about Ryan, all the success he's had on the field, that was something that I think that most people don't realize, just kind of the growth also as a leader and a person in his time in Oklahoma City as well.
Ha-Seong Kim, if you see him in person, especially the first time you see him, I mean, he's just very impressive. Just the lower body strength, the speed, the way he cuts balls off, the ease of which he throws a ball, all those kinds of things. So your impressions of Ha-Seong Kim?
Athlete.
Oh, yeah.
I think when players come over from Japan or Korea, we stereotype them in a certain way in terms of like, well, this guy can make contact, he's really fundamentally sound. You hear those kind of things. Kim, tremendous athlete. I think first and foremost, the speed and the guy is another tireless worker, loves the game, always wants to get better. You come over, you sign a 3-year free agent deal, and then you get sent down to AAA to basically start your domestic career. And there was no pouting, there was no bitterness or anything like that. And even though there's a language barrier there are certain traits that I think transcend that, and you could just tell how good of a guy he was and the kind of energy he brought. People gravitate toward him.
No doubt.
Is the term that was once told to me, and you see it when he's there as well. And just again, like on the field, one of those spark plugs in a sense, can do a few different things for you. Also, and I think even his time in the first couple months there in Oklahoma City, you saw improvements in certain things, and you saw avenues to continue to improve. But yeah, I think it's a guy who, again, and whatever gets, I think the huge thing that gets undersold, whether it's Kim or anyone else, like you're coming, not only do you have a high pressure job to begin with, you are going to a completely different culture, a completely different place where you don't speak the language. It's not your first language. I could never do anything like that.
Yeah, right.
So I don't think that really gets taken. It's like they're just expected to acclimate, immediately.
Absolutely.
Whether, again, it's someone from Asia, whether it's someone from Latin America, and that is just a really, really, really hard thing to do. And I think that, hey, we saw it with Yamamoto this year, kind of coming into his own.
No doubt.
Not that he had a poor 2024 by any means, but really kind of came into his own this year, and I would think there will be similar strides for Kim here in 2026.
Yeah. 2 middle infielders last year, Noah Miller. Talk about his defense and then kind of what your impressions were of his offensive side, because I'll say this, you don't have to say this, but he's a defense-first guy. The offense is coming around. If he can be a league average offensive player, I think you have a really good player there in Noah Miller. And then Austin Gauthier, and just kind of the changes he made this year. The first half wasn't very good. I think he kind of rededicated himself the second half. So talk about those two.
If you look up the term lockdown defender, I know it's cliche to set something up like this, but there's Noah Miller's picture. It's one of those where, like, gosh, you heard this about Cal Ripken. Like,
yeah,
he just, like, there's not a whole lot of flash to it, but the range is so good.
Yeah.
And just like anything hit to the left side of the infield you just expect is going to be an out. And just because between the pre-pitch anticipation and that first step and everything, he literally made one error in his time in AAA. And that didn't happen until the last week of the season.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And it was almost kind of like, wait, that actually happened. But yeah, it was, he joined us July the 4th, made one error last week of the season, game in Tacoma. And and I've heard and learned that, like, he was still battling kind of an injury. He was coming up from last year too. So in a sense, maybe it wasn't even fully 100%. But yeah, just everything is there that you would want in a shortstop to be. Again, range to both sides, good arm. The internal clock is incredible. There are so many slowly hit balls that side where you're thinking in your head, like, it's really going to be a tough play. It's probably going to be a hit for this guy. And the next thing you know, Noah makes it look routine and throws him out and gets him. And gosh, I mean, what that can do for your team and defense is huge. And going back to what you said, like, you don't need him or a player of his profile to be even a league above average hitter. Like you said, you get him to league average. That's humongous. You can even live with below average as long as it's not too drastic. You can live with that. So, and I think we saw flashes of what he can be. He's a switch hitter, and I saw him drive balls from both sides of the plate occasionally and here and there. But a guy it's going to make a lot of contact too, doesn't strike out much. It's good at getting the bat on the ball. I think some would say the issue is maybe the quality contact sometimes, but still a pretty young player. Like, he's got years to mature and grow and get strength and improve. And like you said, the defense is just it's fun to watch. It's not too often where you label a player in baseball about, like, man, their defense is really fun to watch, and he's one of them for sure. Then across the other side of the middle infield, Austin Gauthier, like you said, first half did not go well. And in talking with Austin, he said, I tried to be someone I wasn't. I tried to be more of the, hit more home runs. And it's hard to fault him when there's so much emphasis on that in this day and age across the game. And then he said, I just really had to get back to what I was best at, and that's stepping up to the plate every time and trying to take the second baseman's head off, with the line drive. Absolutely. And not only that, but the walks kind of got back to where he had been previously. He ended up setting our team single-season walk record when it was in the Bricktown era.
Oh, wow. Sure. I didn't realize that. Cool.
Ended up doing that. I think the defense got better as the year went on too, and maybe it was just being a little bit more free at the plate and feeling a little bit better and all that. But I think defensively, he was most guys. I mean, all these guys are just such driven, dedicated workers. They don't get to this level without being one. But every day, out there. I mean, even Sunday day games, 10 a.m. he's out there, doing stuff. Just continue to refine, work, and get better, defensively too.
Yeah, Will Klein, Justin Robleski, two guys you got to see quite a bit at AAA Oklahoma City. Will Klein more recently, what a wonderful young man he is. He's another one of those like Matt Sauer where you think he's a little bit older than he actually is, and he's actually quite young for the position he's in. So anything those two did in the World Series that surprised you, and how much pride did you take in watching that knowing them as well as you do?
Will Klein was unique because we had faced him earlier in the year when he was with Tacoma, and we kind of got the Will Klein experience in a sense. Like, one game, you're like, holy moly, like this guy's amazing. Then the next game, like, it wasn't that great. And that was a lot of his time with OKC as well, just the inconsistency. Like, you saw the stuff was there.
Oh, yeah.
You saw why the Dodgers were interested in him. And I do remember there was a game, I think it was late August against Memphis, where short on pitching, weren't, down by a few runs. And he had already gone like 2+, and Henny was about to take him out. He's like, no, just let me go. And he gave, he went 3 innings. And where the results didn't matter, I think it was 3 scoreless, but at that time, like, the results weren't as much as the innings mattered and the outs mattered. And like, that kind of showed me a little bit something different about him. Of course, it's not quite comparing it to 4 scoreless in the World Series. I don't think you expect anybody, any reliever, to do that, no matter who they are. So to see that was great for a guy who, oh, by the way, had not pitched in a game in basically a month. To go out and do that was pretty incredible. I think talking with DA, pitching coach, said, for him, it was just about accessing the zone more. That was his term, accessing the zone more. And we saw it in the final couple weeks of the regular season, where he was starting to become, like almost untouchable at AAA as well. And I think that's so much of these guys, AAA and the big league is just, it's the consistency part, putting it together. If that obviously doesn't, throwing 4 scoreless and becoming, a hero in a sense, a name that a lot of Dodgers fans are never going to forget, obviously will set you up, I think, for a big confidence boost and hopefully a big year coming up for Will. For Robo too, I mean, him as well as anybody. This guy's not going to back down from anything.
Oh my gosh.
Anyone at any time. And, you saw it in Game 7 of the World Series too. And the whole thing with Jimenez and all that. And, I think Robo, that was not as much of a surprise just because you would see him have runs of success at the big league level, but he's also pitching in a much different role than he ever had before. And you're doing it in Game 7 of the World Series. which is, it's tough for anybody, but a guy who, and I've said this about certain players, and I don't want it today taken right. He doesn't care. And doesn't care. Doesn't care if it's Game 7 of the World Series or Wednesday night at Chickasaw Town Ballpark in April. The compete is still there. And, something I do want to say about him as well as Emmett Sheehan is, I went back at the box score. Those two combined for 7 outs. In 7 outs, no runs allowed in Game 7 of a World Series, where them, like most teams, the Dodgers, like most teams these days, it is, your reliever usage or pitcher usage is based on lanes, as the term is, like lanes, what part of the opposing lineup is going to be best for this guy. If you have a healthy Kirby Yates, you have a healthy Tanner Scott, righty-lefty, like Sheehan the righty, Robo the lefty, like those are their lanes. Like Kirby Yates is pitching where Emmett Sheehan does. Tanner Scott is pitching where Justin Wroblewski does.
Great point.
Emmett Sheehan, 6th-round pick. Anyone could have had him. Justin Wroblewski, 11th-round pick who barely pitched in college because of a lot of different circumstances. Anybody could have had him. So it also goes back to the point of, again, yes, the Dodgers spend a lot at the big league level. They got 7 outs from guys that basically were kind of insurance policies in a sense, and it goes just to the depth that they have, in that situation, the highest pressures of situations, for 2 guys they drafted, not first rounders, not big bonus babies by any means. So that's an example that I will be pointing to for a long time. When you get the complaints, well, the Dodgers buy all their players, so they do this or they do that. No, not necessarily.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, so last player we're going to talk about here, Bobby Miller got moved to relief, got off to a really good start in as far as being a relief pitcher. I think sometime maybe like in August is whenever they moved him, and then had a couple of rough outings. Where are we at with Bobby Miller? What do you see with him?
I think it was a lot of like what we saw Bobby as a starter. You would see the flashes, you would see it, and it's It's so tantalizing. And like you said, there were some really good outings. There were some bad ones. There were some times where things in higher leverage situations did not go as well. I think it did there were a couple of instances, though, at the end of the year, in all fairness, where he was able to succeed and kind of get over that hump in the higher leverage situation, closing out games and all that stuff. I know a big adjustment was really in the bullpen, kind of shelving the 4-seam fastball and now going more of 2-seam and cutter as opposed to a more traditional slider. He still has the curve, still has the changeup that I think even played up a little bit more out of the bullpen a couple times. But it is people have asked me about Bobby Miller before. It's like, gosh, no one wants to figure this out more than Bobby does. Trust me. No doubt. Learn, being around him and all that. And, everyone is trying to make him a better pitcher. And, we've seen he can be successful in the big leagues. And, it's I'm not sure, what the role is going to be this year. If the plan is to keep him in the bullpen, if it is to move him back into a starting role, I have not heard anything about that yet. Probably won't until we get to spring training. But I think that it's a non-answer answer. Like we know it's possible. What needs to be done to get on a consistent basis? Of course, I certainly don't have the answers to that, but there are people who are a lot smarter, working very diligently behind the scenes to get it to that point.
Yeah, Jason Martin, a couple years ago, he made the statement to me, I'll never forget, that everybody's timetable is different. So whenever you have the talent of a guy like Bobby Miller, you keep throwing that guy out there and keep trying this and that and seeing if it figures out. So, hey, I've hammered with you a lot of business questions, a couple fun questions here. Alex, you ready?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, here we go. What is the most awesome thing that you have seen during your time as the play-by-play broadcaster for AAA Oklahoma City?
it's hard not to go with the 23 championship.
Yeah.
For me in my career, that was the fourth time the team I worked for had gotten to the finals, and they had lost the previous three times.
Oklahoma City had never made it, had they?
Well, once, 2016,
okay.
since I had been there. Twice in A-ball. Lost every time. So to see that was great, obviously, and for a team that had been so dominant throughout the regular season to get it done and really do it without much fanfare or drama. Just went out and took care of business there in the PCL Championship Series, and of course being with Travis Barbary, our manager, Dodger lifer, to him to get that championship too, was awesome. That's definitely up there. You think about James Outman hitting for the cycle twice in 4 days. The first one, of course, is the ultimate one. Capped it with the walk-off home run.
Walk-off grand slam.
And then to do it 4 days later again, which he completed it, the second one, with a single against a position player pitching.
Right.
But still, incredible accomplishment. But the 5-for-5 cycle, walk-off home run, 2 triples also in that game. And that's one of the best individual games I've ever seen. Of course, you have to mention Ryan Ward's walk-off inside the park home run.
That's
earlier this year. It's such a rare play, and of course it happened in the big leagues like 2 or 3 weeks later.
Oh, it did. I did not realize that.
Yeah, Patrick Bailey.
Okay.
And I said it's not too often that when a single play happens on May the 1st, that was the date of the Wardo inside the park home run, that like you already know you've seen your team's like play of the year. Like there's nothing that's going to top it. And that was true. It was. And I think the thing that gets underrated, or the untold story, is like there is such another element of that from our third base coach and bench coach, Chris Gutierrez.
Yes.
And knowing, okay, like this is where the ball's hit. This is me looking to see that, knowing that their left fielder who picked the ball did not have a very good arm. There's just such an extra calculus in that 2 outs, in a bottom of the 7th of a 7-inning game. So you're going to extras, you might as well, just all that stuff is happening and such. It would have been very easy to hold him, at third base, but hey, give it a shot, and it worked out. And that was such a unique play. It's a Kids Day game too, first game of the doubleheader, and like that is the furthest thing from anybody's mind that is going to happen, and it does,
including Ryan Ward.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So seeing that, those are the ones that come off the top of my mind. I'm sure I'm forgetting some stuff along the way too, but team hitting 8 home runs in one game in 2019 in Iowa, which again, 2019 has a little bit of an asterisk because everybody was hitting 200 home runs that year. The ball was juiced. But seeing stuff like that, then 2015, doubleheader against Iowa in a very final week of the regular season, a very important game and series. That this is before the current extra inning rules were in place. You win game 1 on a walk-off home run in the 19th inning. And then you have to play another game after that.
I think Corey Seager played every inning of that doubleheader, if I remember.
Oh, he most definitely did.
Yes. Yeah. And then Ramon Troncoso, who's one of the low A coaches, I think he started game 2. He
started game 2, and then the pitcher who threw this basically the second part of that game, guy by the name of Deck McGuire, had some time in the big leagues. He was in Tulsa when game 1 started. And they basically, calls were made. He's driving to Oklahoma City from Tulsa while game 1 is still going on. Gets in the parking lot as the walk-off home run is hit, and then pitches like the final 3 innings of game 2.
That is so minor league baseball. Yeah. Hey, Deck, we need you to head on over to Oklahoma City. We've got a doubleheader we need you to.
Yeah.
How awesome is that? Okay, what's the craziest weather event that you've ever experienced at a stadium?
There's not been anything too extreme, I guess, in Oklahoma City. You know, we were at home in 2013, the night of the El Reno tornado in late May of 2013. And I do remember everyone was down in the basement for quite a while that time for that night. You know, there was a time, it doesn't happen too often though, but there was actually a time this year, like around, it was like 4 or 5 o'clock, where we had some severe weather come in, and everyone who's, you know, fans weren't in the stadium at this time or anything like that, but everyone went, you know, down to the basement when the sirens went off. But we played that night. I mean, it poured, but the field drain's great, and ended up playing that night. Some of the crazier things I think I've seen, I do remember a time, I can't remember what year, 18 or 19 against Iowa, it was kind of in the middle of the game, where like it was, and you hear people around Oklahoma talk about this, the sky started turning green.
Yes.
And that's like, you know, good things don't happen when you see that. And then it actually ended up knocking out power to half the stadium. It didn't get fixed till like close to the game the next day.
Oh, wow.
I remember we were in Omaha once when we still played them, and their stadium, it's out in the suburbs. And when it was first built, I mean, there was literally nothing around. I think there's been some houses in the school. Of course, we haven't been there now in several years. I don't know what the development's like. I do remember, though, I'm walking from the press box to the clubhouse, and, you know, it's a very cool, it's an early, also, back in the day when we played Iowa and Omaha, there was always that, for whatever reason, I don't know what we did, the schedule makers, there was always an Iowa-Omaha road trip like in April that we had to go do. And the weather for those whole 7-8 days was just miserable. I mean, you were lucky if you played every game and all that. And I remember I'm walking, and they have the tarp on, and they have, you know, the Gators, the small John Deeres, like basically the corners of the tarps to keep it on. And the wind blows it out from under, from one of the Gators.
Wow.
Saw that. And then there's kind of, it's not as much weather as just kind of humor as in Colorado Springs when I saw a tarp rip in half, like when they were pulling it. Like basically, I think one part of the team was like going and the other part of the crew was not. And like, it was like slow motion. I'm just looking straight at it, and the rip is just, it's going down the middle, and
that's hilarious,
and all that. Yeah. I still have the picture of like, of what after it had ripped in half on my phone.
Baseball is awesome. Last question here. You do some college basketball too, and I know I've been in some crazy setups in terms of press boxes to try to broadcast in. One was a caboose to an old train. One time, I think my partner and I were in different rooms, and we were trying to communicate with each other, that kind of deal. What's the crazy, I won't say worst, but the craziest setup, whether it be your college or minor league baseball, that you've ever had to deal with?
Yeah, I've been fortunate in terms of the basketball side of things. It might not be very spacious, but at least you're indoors.
Oh, you're packed in there in basketball.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Baseball, you know, when I was working in the Cal League back in the day, you know, Visalia, you were out, you kind of like had a tent over you, but you were outside. Bakersfield was infamous, you know, it's being the only ballpark where the batter faced west. So you never had an exact first pitch time because you had to wait for the sun to basically go down past a certain part of the batter's eye.
Oh, wow.
So you didn't want to be there in late June because your games weren't starting until, you know, probably 8 o'clock.
Oh, wow.
But even in the press box, because of course you're a little bit higher up, like you're spending the first few innings like going like this while you're calling the game. So yeah, that was a well-known one, Samlin Ballpark in Bakersfield, California. You know, there are some places where even there's a current place I'm not going to mention that is less than ideal. And those who have talked to me before or other people who throughout the PCL know exactly which city that's in right now. Mm-hmm. It's just a very tough working environment. I'll also say, in terms of basketball, though, when I was in college, though, and this is now, 20 years ago, I was part of the broadcast to the first ever stream of basketball, like video stream of a basketball game. and we were like up in the catwalk, basically, you know, calling that game and putting it, you know, it was the athletic department that wanted to do it. For whatever reason, we weren't down on the floor. I don't know. But yeah, that was, I tell people that, I tell young people that, and I'm like, I know I've got, actually, I don't have the short T-Rex arms. I'm not technically a dinosaur. But, you know, we did the first ever streaming, you know, video broadcast of it. In a Power 4 conference school.
Oh, really? Okay, so it was the first one ever. I guess I didn't catch on to that. Okay, cool.
Yeah. You know, 20 years ago now. So, yeah, it's like I said, when we were talking about something earlier, this podcast, you know, just first world problems.
Yeah, no doubt.
But yeah.
Absolutely awesome. I have taken a lot of your time, but it is super fun for me to get to catch up with you and to get to talk to you, Alex Freedman. What an honor. And also wanted to say on the air, thank you so much for your wonderful accommodations. I can't tell you how much it means to me personally, having gone to Oklahoma City AAA games since about 1976 and just getting to be and have the access I have. I cannot thank you enough, Alex Freedman.
Well, you're very welcome. And Casey, I have to give you your flowers as well. You know, you're such a great resource for me a lot of time, because with everything else and all my other job responsibilities, I don't always have a chance to be able to sit down and talk with guys as much as I want to. And sometimes you're able to, and I use your interviews, you know, as resources for me too. And I think even love hearing the perspective you get from the younger guys too, and listening to them. And I know a lot of people appreciate the work you do, not just fans, but the players and coaches also. So I'm glad that we can have this working relationship for sure.
No doubt about it. Looking forward to 2026. Alex Freedman, thank you so much.
Thanks, Casey.